to have the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So you wanted to have a tree as a prop on the stage. And if you went outside and just cut down a tree in mid-December, you're going to get a bare bone, awful looking thing. So they went looking for conifers because they're green. So they would either have a conifer or they would have a fake tree, a pyramid actually made out of wood that was supposed to represent a tree. And then they would decorate it with communion wafers. They would hang those on there, made out of flour and water. And those are little round communion wafers. And then they would hang apples because apples are red. And there is no apple mentioned in the story of Adam and Eve. If you look at the Bible, if you don't believe me, there's no apple. But they couldn't imagine anything more wonderful than an apple, because what else could Eve have possibly have tempted Adam with other than a nice juicy apple? So apples would go on there. And that was really the beginning. And then they had this association with this evergreen tree. But of course, the tradition of decorating the house with greenery goes back thousands of years, but not Christmas trees. But for example, in Egypt, they would decorate the houses 4,000 years ago with greenery at the winter solstice, and they would eat fruitcake. So they would make fruitcake. They would have some for the family, and then they would have some for the dead. You leave a nice fruitcake on your grandmother's grave. That's a nice thing to do. So when you eat fruitcake at Christmas, you can thank the Egyptians for that. But anyway, so what happened was, it was in Estonia in the year 1441. There was a guild of merchants, and military and merchants had a guild. And they decided to take one of these trees from the Passion Plays, I guess, and hey, let's not throw it out. Let's just bring it to the town square and put it there, and people can get drunk and dance around it. So they did. And then they set it on fire. Wow. And that became a tradition. It became this big party, but it was outdoors. It wasn't indoors. And I mean, this is a complicated subject because, in pagan times, there's the concept of the world tree. Trees are very sacred. And, and in Christianity, that was all suppressed. So in a certain way, this was a way of bringing back the world tree and honoring the tree. And I mean, I can go on and on about this, like, why are world trees important?
But how did it get so complicated? How did the stories get so confused or mixed up or changed or modified? I mean, was it on purpose, or is it just like, the telephone game that we played as kids?
Well, there's a tendency for Christianity to take over other people's rituals and rename them and say that they're Christian, Yeah. And that has to do with the trees, because, like, for example, in Scandinavia, you have Yggdrasil, which is the cosmic ash, and the earth is in the middle of the ash tree, and that's a whole other big subject. The Druids, trees are extremely sacred to Druids, especially oak trees and yew. Those are probably the most important, but all trees are sacred. And that's because the roots go down to the underworld where the ancestors and the fairies are, and the branches go up to the sky world where the gods are. So if you want to communicate with them, you just hang out with a tree. So I like to say every tree is a church for a Druid. You can stand next to any tree. If it's 2 inches high, if it's 300 feet, you're in church, because you go down to the underworld, up to the upper world. And I forget, what did you ask me?
How things got
so convoluted.
Yeah, well, there was a deliberate policy. One of the popes, and I always forget which one, actually had an edict that told the missionaries that when you go out and you convert people, if you find local legends or traditions or holy wells or sacred trees or whatever, just make them Christian. So a well that was sacred to a pagan goddess becomes sacred to Mary, that kind of thing. They that was very deliberate, very conscious and very deliberate.
Wow. Okay.
And
So
roundabout when did that start to happen?
I don't want to quote a date because I don't have it
Oh,
in my mind,
but
but
like age-wise, like is it like a certain age, a time frame,
when the
or?
missionaries were going out. I mean, for example,
Mm.
I talk about poinsettia, for
Hmm.
example.
oh,
Why
there's a
is
good
that a Christmas flower? It's because the Franciscan monks went to South America and figured out it was sacred to the Aztecs. And
Hmm.
so they said, hey, let's create a parade in honor of Christmas and have everybody carry this sacred plant, which was the poinsettia, and let's decorate the altar with poinsettia. And then the natives, the indigenous people, will get the idea that the church is a sacred place because it's got this sacred plant all over the place, and
Got
that's
it.
just one example. But
What's the
wow.
significance of the poinsettia then?
well, it was sacred to the Aztecs. It's one of their sacred plants. I
Is it
mean,
like a teacher plant? Like, is it a teacher plant for them? Did they like brew it and mix it? Like,
oh
do we know
boy,
the?
you would ask me that. Where do I have notes? Poinsettia. Okay. Um,
I like this. This is fun.
uh, if you think of the poinsettia flowers, a nice red poinsettia or a white one, it
Yeah.
radiates like a star. Okay.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So it's an herb of the sun and of fire.
Hmm.
And it was considered an herb of courage, joy, strength, generosity, transformation, leadership. I think it was sacred to warriors. Um, but I mean, I
So
have a
they'd
lot
use it
more
in
about it in,
ceremonies?
yeah, it was a sacred plant.
So,
I
Cool.
sorry.
so for clarification, when were you referring to it as an herb, was it or is it edible? Did they consume it?
You have to forgive me. I don't have every detail of every plant in my head, but it is
Oh,
in the
for
book.
sure.
I talk
Oh,
about
cool.
No, it's
I mean,
okay. No,
it
that's
has
okay.
it
It's
has
this
a
is
milky
fascinating.
sap. I think women used it to increase breast milk because
Oh,
Mhm.
Doctrine
okay.
of Signatures, it has a milky sap. But that's just what I off the top of my head. I'd have to look at the
Oh,
book.
Wow. Of
right.
course.
Well, that's I'm just going to go on my list of more stuff to look out. So this is fascinating. Okay, so then obviously the one question that everybody listening has is
Yeah.
what about Santa Claus? Where'd Santa Claus come from?
Oh my goodness. That's
I've
another.
heard
Okay.
so
I'm
many.
looking.
There's so many different stories behind the origin of Santa Claus.
Yeah, it's a good one because my daughter just asked me this like a week ago, and I didn't really have a full, solid answer to her. I mean, I had
Well,
some.
Santa Claus was not originally dressed in red and white. That's a
Hmm.
modern idea that was invented, I think, by the Coca-Cola Company.
Yep. Yeah, I heard that. I've heard
Although, yeah, although I like the fact that he's dressed in red and white,
that.
because oh, I have a poinsettia cocktail in
Oh,
the
interesting.
book. But
Oh, cool.
no, um, yeah, if you go to Scandinavia at Christmas time, the ornaments, a lot of them are red and white, and you see these red mushrooms with white spots, right? And it turns out that the reindeer eat the red and white mushrooms, which are Amanita muscaria.
Hmm.
And the reindeer get stoned, and then the shamans would drink the urine of the reindeer because you can't eat the mushrooms, they're poisonous. But if you drink the urine, you're okay. And then the shaman would get high and they would do their
Interesting.
thing. So I think that this red and white creature that flies through the sky with reindeer is the spirit of the Amanita, in the same way that
Hmm.
Mescalito is the spirit of the mescaline cactus. That's what I
Interesting.
think. Okay. And then another thing is that the reindeer, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, they all have antlers, right? They are
Mm.
female. They're not male. The
Right.
male reindeer drop their antlers. The females keep their antlers. So they're female reindeer pulling the spirit of the Amanita.
Hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Very interesting.
So I know that this question has just popped up in everyone's head. What made them think that they should drink the deer's pee? I
They were
mean,
probably watching the animals. I mean, that's how humans learned a lot of things. We
yeah.
learned medicine from the monkeys, we learn
But
um
do animals consume urine?
no, no, but
Oh,
they just figured out that that's how you can do it and not get killed. For example, if you have a goat, if your goat eats poison ivy, you can drink the milk and then you develop a resistance to poison ivy. If you eat poison ivy, you're going to be in big trouble, right? So
right.
somebody figured out that you can drink the goat's milk after the goat eats the poison ivy and you're going to be fine. Well,
Hmm.
that's what the shamans
Interesting.
did. But that's just one of the
Sure.
pieces of Santa
I
Claus. I
know.
mean, there's other Saint Nicholas, who was an actual bishop, who was a really nice guy apparently, who distributed money to the poor and gave his money to young girls who were too poor to have a dowry, and he was a real guy and very generous and became a saint. So he's kind of like a precursor to Santa Claus. And then there's the whole thing of coming down the chimney. There's a lot of spirits that come down the chimney, not just Santa Claus. But the fact that he comes down the chimney tells us that he is a spirit, one of the winter spirits.
And what is behind the coming down the chimney? That's just how they are able to enter the home.
Well, in the dark of the year, in the coldest, darkest time of year, your house is all closed up. Of course, I'm talking about from a Northern European perspective,
Sure.
right? I
Right.
mean, I come from Northern European heritage, I mean, I can't talk. I mean, I do have African drink recipes in the book and some cooking recipes, but I wouldn't presume to talk about that. But in Northern Europe at Christmas time, it is the darkest time of year. It is the coldest time of year. And the house is all closed. But where are you vulnerable? Your keyholes and your chimney. That's where spirits can come in. Okay. So that's why you have to have a Yule log. And the Yule log burns continuously for 12 days and nights during the absolute dark, the darkest time of year. And that's because the spirits that normally live underground or who fly through the dark winter sky don't usually come to Earth because they don't feel comfortable here in the light. They don't like the light. So they wait for the darkest time of year and they come up from the underworld or they come down from the sky world. And you got to have light. And we still do this. This is why we have lights on trees and lights on the house and bonfires, and we're still doing it. We've been doing this for thousands of years,
Really interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, and then now the Yule and Christmas are different. They're not the same celebration.
Yule is the pagan celebration. Christmas
Okay.
is the Christ Mass.
Mhm.
It's Christmas, Christ Mass.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and again, that's another example of the church taking things over because December 25th was actually the birth date of the god Mithras, who's a Persian god who was very honored in Rome. And the Romans had a big festival called Saturnalia, which must have been a really fun time because everybody ran through the streets naked, drunk, and slaves and masters traded places.
That's because they had that deer urine. That's why.
Not in Rome, that was in Scandinavia. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean the Roman Saturnalia is also a forerunner to Christmas, but the church said, oh, they're having this big celebration on December 25th. We better make that Christian. So they did. There's no evidence that Jesus was born on December 25th.
So again, that was another way to indoctrinate them or make them feel as if they're one. So they
that was a deliberate policy. It's like wherever you see people celebrating something, let's just tell them it's a Christian holiday and they can keep celebrating. They can keep having feasts and running around and celebrating. But now we'll say it's Jesus instead of Mithras,
So I'm assuming that you're going to be doing a book of holidays here pretty soon because this is fascinating.
Well, I have
Have
I
you?
have oh yeah, I have 3 There's the sacred herbs of Yule and Christmas, the sacred herbs of Samhain, which is Halloween, and I do the same thing. And then the sacred herbs of spring, which is the herbs associated with Beltane, which is May Day. So those are 3 volumes, and those are for grown-ups with lots of recipes and drinks and all the lore. But then I also have a children's book called Once Around the Sun, stories, crafts, and recipes to celebrate the sacred earth year.
Oh, that's cool.
All right. So now you've just confirmed that you're going to be doing at least 3 more interviews with us. So in 2024.
Okay.
This is fascinating. I love this. All right. So, and then, so then we have the winter solstice. Tell us about the winter solstice and how that has become such a prevalent in at this time of year, besides the fact that it's winter. So
Well,
there was goddesses. There was a worshiping of a goddess.
No.
No.
Well,
Okay.
yes and no.
Okay.
But it depends. I mean, in Northern Europe, I'm talking about Scandinavia,
Sure.
the sun, Sunna, is female. Okay. Same thing in Japan. Same thing in Egypt. You had Ra, Bast, and Sekhmet. It was a trinity. Bast and Sekhmet are both female, and Ra was male. So a lot of pagans think the sun is female, but most people in modern times think of the sun as male. I think of the sun as female. Celtic thinking the sun is female. Also, the moon is female. So in terms of goddesses, you could say the return of the sun goddess. You could. But the solstice is a astronomical phenomenon that happens all over the world to everybody. Doesn't matter what religion you are. And it's just the time of the longest nights and the shortest days. And the winter solstice is the standstill of the sun, and it lasts about 5 days. The sun is on the same spot on the horizon. So it's a 5-day period, really. But there's solstice night, and that's when people do the rituals, the ceremonies. I don't know, did that answer your question?
It does. So so they use that day because it's the longest day,
The longest night. The longest
night. So
Yeah.
that allowed them to so they did all their rituals at that time. So basically they had more time to get those rituals done, or was it everything? How was everything put together in that thinking of theirs?
Okay, well, paganism is an earth religion. I
Right.
happen to think that if we as people, as humans, are going to survive, we better start thinking like pagans, because pagans see everything as sacred. The sun is sacred, the moon, the earth, the trees, the plants, the animals, the water, the fire, the air. It's all sacred, right? So when this phenomenon is happening called the winter solstice, you honor it. You honor the dark. You start by honoring the dark. The dark is beautiful. The dark has wings. All things start in the dark. A seed planted in the earth starts in the dark. A baby in the womb starts in the dark. Everything starts in the dark. The year starts in the dark, So you start by honoring the dark. It's not this big scary thing. It's just like, if you look up at the sky, there's more dark than there is light. And the universe is mostly dark. There's little points of light, like behind both of you, I can see your image of the night sky. There's little tiny points of light, but what do you see most? Dark, right? So you start by, you honor the dark, and then you honor the return of the light. And in the book, for example, I have potions. I have recipes for drinks where the herbs are all solar and the fruits are all solar, and you can drink that while you're drumming or chanting and honoring the return of the sun. But typically what we would do is we would sit in the dark, and we would meditate in the dark, like the beauty of the dark and the sacredness of the dark. And then one person will light a candle, and then they hand their candle to the next person who's holding a candle, and they light their candle. Now you have 2 candles, and then they turn to the next person, and pretty soon the whole room you know, I usually go to a ritual where there's about 100 people. So by the end, we have 100 candles going, and we're all singing, you know, and now we're saying, oh, the light is coming back. And what's really interesting to me is when I look at the Jewish tradition, for example, the Hanukkah celebration, which is actually another example of a high temple religion taking over a pagan custom, because the menorah is actually shaped like a flowering almond tree, and a flowering pink almond tree, and that tree was sacred to the goddess Asherah. But if you try to tell people, if you talk to Jewish people and you try to tell them that, they won't believe you, you know, like, what? But anyway, so in the Hanukkah celebration, what do? You start with one candle, and then the next night it's two, and the next night it's three, and the next night, you know, and it goes on. This is the old way. This is bringing back the sun, strengthening the light, you know, the celebration of the return of the light.
It's fascinating. This really is. This is absolutely fascinating.
So another herb around Christmas that you know, I think that I've heard stuff about is the mistletoe, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, mistletoe is very sacred both in Scandinavian tradition and in Druid tradition. And there's a whole story of the god Baldur, who was a very kind, loving god. And you know, he was so, I guess he was kind of wimpy, but the other gods would play with him, play tricks on him, make fun. And so his mother, who was a goddess, put a spell on all the plants so that nothing could hurt him. But then Loki, of course, who always causes trouble, noticed that the mistletoe didn't have a spell on it. So he shot Baldur with a mistletoe arrow and killed him. And to me, that kind of it symbolizes the death of the sun, right? And
So then why is it associated with, you know, mistletoe and then having a kiss? How did that come about?
I'm not done. I'm not finished. So anyway, here's Baldur. He's dead. Okay, that's the dark, right? And then the goddess brings him back to life, and where she cries, and her tears fall, and that everywhere her tear falls creates the white berries on the mistletoe. So the god of joy and love and light is back. That's the return of the sun, you know. And he's love. He's loving and kind, unlike the harsh, dark winter, you know. And so that's one piece of it. And then the Druids have a whole other thing. But anyways, so it's all about love.
So were the most of the pagan beliefs all based on more of the Norse mythology?
No.
No? Okay.
No. Paganism is everywhere. You have the Judeo.
But it started somewhere.
Yeah.
Did it start up in the Netherlands?
No, it's all over the world. It's everywhere. The only people that are not pagan are the Judeo-Christian Islamic believers.
Okay.
Those people are the people of the book, quote unquote. And they are monotheists, and they say their God is the only God. And, you know, that group is not pagan. Everybody else is pagan. So whether you're African or indigenous or whatever you are, if you're not monotheistic, if you believe that there are multiple gods and goddesses, if you believe the earth is sacred, and you find the divine in fire, and you find the divine in water, and you think there's the divine in trees and plants and animals and all that, chances are you're a pagan. But you just don't know it yet.
Okay. That's funny. So how do animals work? What is their role in the winter traditions or the tradition of Yule? How do animals play a role there besides the deer?
Yeah, I have a whole chapter on that, actually.
Okay.
There's one of the most interesting ones, I think, is the story of the Mari Chlud, and I hope I'm saying that right. It's the old gray mare, or the horse, the horse is actually a symbol of the land goddess in Celtic thinking. But the Mari Chlud tradition is, it's a skull, a horse's skull on a stick, carried by a man, probably because it's really heavy. I don't know if you've ever tried carrying a horse's skull, but they weigh a lot. But anyway, so he's carrying it, and he's got a cloth over him as he goes, so he doesn't look like a human. And the horse's skull is rigged up so that it clacks, so that the jaws clack. So imagine this clacking horse's skull going from house to house and surrounded by a retinue, a group of friends. There might be musicians, poets, people carrying bowls of liquor, wassail, whatever. They go from house to house, and they have like a rhyming competition. They knock on the door, the homeowner opens the door, and the horse is trying to get in using poetry, and the homeowner has to have a witty response. And this goes back and forth, and eventually the horse is let in. But when the horse comes into the house, it runs amok and causes a lot of chaos. And it'll attack usually young women. That's fertility, right? The only thing that can really stop it is a child, a little tiny child holding a piece of candy or something, can go up to the horse, and the horse will stop immediately and calm down. And anyway, but what is this all about? So in Indo-European thinking, the mare of sovereignty, M-A-R-E, horse, not mayor of the town. The great mare of sovereignty is a horse. So at the winter solstice time, you're going door to door, bringing the energy, the fertility, and the blessings of the land goddess from house to house, all through the village. Okay. That's just one. There's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet. I mean, because every culture would have slightly different things, right? So the going back to the books on the herbs and stuff for Christmas, are there any lesser known Christmas Yule herbs that you came across as you were kind of putting the book together?
Okay, I'm looking through the list here.
Like something that's accessible to people, right? So like just as a nice Christmas table fact. I
mean, I have one whole chapter just on greenery, the mystical meaning of all the different greenery. I have another chapter on herbs, but I mean, one that people don't often think about is boxwood. Any plant that stays green over the winter, pines, boxwood, holly, those are all considered herbs of immortality. And the spirit of these plants, they're considered to have a lot of wisdom, because they know how to live in the heat of summer, and they also know how to live in the deep winter. So if you want to bring strength to the home, prosperity, wisdom, the ability to survive, abundance, you bring these herbs of immortality. So you might hang them on the door, or you have your Christmas tree, or you put it over the door, so everybody coming and going will be blessed by the energy of the plant. But boxwood goes back to ancient times. Wealthy Romans, senators and royalty and people like that, would build a fence of boxwood around the house, specifically to attract strength and abundance and prosperity and all that, and to protect the house. It's sacred to Pluto, who's a god of the underworld. And you can make a boxwood Christmas tree. It doesn't have to be pine. But I actually give instructions for making a little small boxwood tree that you can put on your altar
Well, let's go into that because that was going to lead up to my next question. So I was going to say is, are there any specific rituals? Because you kind of touched on a couple of, hang this there and that. Are there any specific rituals or practices involving these sacred herbs that you could recommend for individuals or families looking to incorporate them into the Christmas or the Yule celebration, whatever it is for them?
Okay, well, I should say that in the book, every herb that I mention, I give a
Mhm.
recipe so you can
Yeah.
drink or eat the plant.
Oh, cool.
And you can make the recipe either as just a cooking exercise, or
Very
if you study the magical properties of the ingredients, which I give, it becomes a potion. So your meal can become a potion, your drink becomes a potion.
very
And I have a whole chapter on just libations, drinks. And I was visualizing people doing a ritual
cool.
and making a ritual drink, which you share, right, in your circle. And if you pick the ingredients, so you could pick herbs for peace, or you could pick herbs for healing, or herbs for health, or herbs for abundance, and make a drink, and then and you could create a chant to go along with it. I mean, I talk about that,
That's pretty cool.
and I give
Yeah.
examples. But one thing, the ancient Mayans used chocolate as a ritual drink. It was a sacred drink, and only the royalty were allowed to have chocolate. The peasants weren't.
Hmm.
But the story is that the drink was brought to earth by Quetzalcoatl, who is, it came down on the beam of the morning star to earth, and it was specifically to create bonds of love and unity between people and between people and the gods. So you could make
That's
a chocolate drink and you could pass that around. And, Quetzalcoatl is a really interesting figure because he's a feathered serpent. So what the heck does that mean? So serpents live underground, and feathers means he can fly. So that means he's a god of both the underworld and the upper world.
interesting.
So
Wow.
all creation. But he brought
That's
chocolate.
cool.
Chocolate is sacred.
That's pretty cool.
And still
Yeah, I think
today.
that a lot of people like to do like because this time of year people are thinking of like bringing in the new year and all that kind of stuff. So they're thinking rituals, right? So I think it's great that you have all that kind of stuff. I mean, I'm looking to see if I can get your book here before Christmas on
You
Amazon.
should mention the name of the book. The book is called The Sacred Herbs of Yule and Christmas, Remedies,
Yeah.
Recipes, Magic, and Brews for the Winter Season. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll be
Mhm.
putting the link to that in the description so that people can
Okay.
Yeah.
get this,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
we definitely want them to have this before Christmas. So that's why we were so excited about doing this interview with you, is that it's the perfect, the timing is just absolutely perfect. And
Yeah,
so
it's
this,
very intriguing, very cool. I mean, I like the idea of having, these like old like are they so are these this is a good question. So the stuff you put in there, are they stuff that you've researched that have been in the past in history that you uncovered and you're like, oh, they did this and you put them together in the book? Is that how they came together?
A lot of them are historical. For example,
Wow.
Queen Elizabeth the First. She had magicians in her court. She had
Hmm.
alchemists and magicians, and she would always make gingerbread. Okay, and ginger is a very magical plant, and I have a feeling that she had an ulterior motive, because every person that came to visit her, every like ambassador or king or queen or royalty, important person that came, she always handed them gingerbread. Why did
Hmm.
she do that? It's like, um, but anyway, yeah. So I talk about things like that. So a lot of them have hit. Well, for example, I just talked about the chocolate. That goes back a long time. Um, but some of the magical properties are more modern, but they're accepted magical properties. So kitchen witches and hearth druids use the herbs for magic.
So it's
In
based on Druid magic then? Is that based primarily
uh,
on Druid?
No, it's actually no, it's historical, and then there's quite a bit of witchcraft, and then but it's witchcraft people shouldn't get scared. It's not scary.
Sure, I
It's
think our audience is open to that kind of stuff. So I get it.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
we've
it's
had a
just,
few witches on the show too. So
oh,
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
pretty much
Well,
open to that.
what a potion is, that it's just a potion. A potion is when you have an intent, and you pick plants. For example, ginger livens things. It's heating and warming and jump starts spells. So if you're Queen Elizabeth and you want to be successful in in jump starting negotiations, you give them some gingerbread. Things like
Cool.
that. Um,
I love
Makes
that.
sense.
yeah.
That's
That's
awesome.
that is it really is. It's like, like okay, let's just do something with ginger constantly. So ginger tea, ginger
Yeah, so now
bread.
I
This,
know when Ross offers me food, I'm gonna
yeah, this is what you want. What do you want?
Yeah, what is he doing here?
Yeah.
I have an idea, but first let's just enjoy some ginger cake.
Tea. Yeah,
She
here's
actually
a
made
potion. I mean tea. Here's
well,
a,
she made gingerbread men. What do you call them? Those gingerbread men that people
yeah,
eat?
yeah,
That's what
Yeah.
yeah.
she made. She made them.
That's
Little
wild.
and
So she actually made ginger men. So the ginger
yes,
men cookies and such. So
yeah.
I mean, I'm just gonna go out here on a limb, but I mean, was that intentionally that, here's a gingerbread man and they're consuming themselves or they're consuming something else? Did the gingerbread man represent something besides just ginger?
I don't know what she was thinking. I just think she was trying to get ginger into people so
Mm,
so that the negotiations would
Yeah.
be successful,
that's great.
But yeah, I mean,
Uh,
there's other royal news. The reason that the Christmas trees became so popular in the home, we talked about Estonia and the people dancing around the tree in the square. Eventually, trees did come into the home. They weren't decorated, though. It was just, like in the old Egyptian tradition, you decorate the house with greenery. The Romans decorated the house with greenery. So people were decorating the house with greenery. But in Germany, it really took off to start decorating these trees. And I even have a full page picture of Albert and Victoria, because Prince Albert, who was German, really liked the tradition of decorating the trees. So when Albert and Victoria had decorated Christmas trees at Windsor Castle, I guess, or
mm,
wherever they were, then everybody else had to do it. It became fashionable, and that's why we have decorated Christmas trees in the house, because they made it popular.
Mm-hmm. When it comes again, going off of that, so what tradition made it more the popular as far as the giving of gifts?
Oh, that goes back
Does that go back
thousands of
to
years. Yeah. Like I said, the Egyptians, they gave each other fruitcake, and then they would put the
mm,
fruitcake on the grave of the ancestors.
right?
It's a gift to the ancestors. They would give fruitcake to their friends.
Mhm.
People still do that today. In Rome, they would give gifts to each other, and they would they didn't have wrapping paper, so they wrapped things in cloth and ribbon, and they would
Mhm.
stick a sprig of holly in there. The gift would have a sprig of holly. Holly is a warrior plant. If you
mm,
grab onto holly, it pricks you, right? And it could make you bleed. It has red berries that are like drops of blood, So
mm.
it's one of these trees that can stay green all winter. And so it was a way of giving you strength and fortitude and protection to get you through the darkest time of the year. And they gave
That's
gifts.
pretty cool.
Gave gifts. Lots of gift giving.
Yeah, the things that we do today, we did not invent these things.
Yeah,
Mm,
we were pretty sure about that. I'm hoping that most people understand as well that everything started somewhere, a long, long time ago. And
Right.
so where you have kind of caught our intrigued us is how it's changed and been absorbed and changed and mutated and modified and to a certain degree almost reversed. It's my understanding that Halloween is like that. That Halloween has been completely
That's a big subject. We
yeah,
should do a show just on
we
Halloween.
will.
Oh, we will.
Yeah.
We will.
We will. I'm already going to put you on the calendar a few times.
Mhm.
Okay.
That would be something else. But so now then so it seems that from everything you've said so far is that all of the colors of everything are so symbolic
Mhm.
when it comes to, whether it be the berries or the color of the leaves or the white. What about, like, there's a lot of gold that's used in Christmas as well. Is that symbolic of um being rich or abundance? What is that symbolic of,
Well,
if
the
anything?
main Christmas colors are red, green, white, and gold. Okay.
Mhm.
And I have again a whole section just on the meaning of the colors.
Mhm.
But red has to do with passion, with life, blood, with fire. And again, that's all about making sure that the fires keep burning, that
Fuel,
nature
yeah.
doesn't die, that we keep going, and
Hmm.
and so that's red. And that's why we have red food like cranberries. We start
Okay.
around Thanksgiving with cranberries, but what cranberries are used to decorate the Christmas tree, or were traditionally, and also are sitting on the table. And that's why it's the lifeblood, it's the fire. Okay.
Hmm.
Then we have the green, which is the herbs of immortality, the things that do not die. And that tells us that nature will survive. You look out the window and it looks like everything's dead, but then you notice there's a few things that are still green. Nature is still going to go on.
Yeah.
And then the color white is very interesting because white is snow, of course, but white has to do with purity. It's the absence of color, it's all color. But it's also the color of death. And when we think of at Halloween, for example, when you think of a ghost, typically a ghost floating through the air going boo, what does it look like? It's depicted as this white sheet-like thing, but that's not what ghosts look like if you've ever seen one. But so why do they look like that? Because the winding shroud, and we don't even do shrouds anymore, but we still think of ghosts as these white things. So we associate the color white with death. So it's the death of nature, the
Hmm.
seeming death of nature, everything under the snow, and the snow comes and it covers everything like a shroud, that's the white. And then you have the gold, which is the return of the sun. It's also the stars, because when the leaves fall down from the trees, you can look up at the sky and all of a sudden you see the stars much better than you could in the summer. And it's just, and in Christian lore, of course, you have the Star of Bethlehem, and you have the gold that was brought by the Magi, who were astrologers, Persian astrologers who brought gold. Um, but yeah.
That's great.
Wow, that is something else. So somebody wanted me to ask you about something called wassailing. What is
Yeah,
wassailing?
I actually have a recipe in there for an old historical recipe for wassail, which is a drink. And the drink is called lamb's wool, actually, because it's frothy. And wassailing, like the Mari Hlud that I talked about, the horse that goes door to door, wassailing again was a group of people who would go door to door carrying a bowl of wassail, which is alcohol, an alcoholic drink, and they would go door to door and offer drinks, and then people would give them coins or food in exchange, and then they would have a party. But you can
Christmas Carol.
also,
This is
huh?
Christmas. This is Christmas caroling.
Yeah, but it's called wassailing.
People will go
Uh,
down the neighborhood, sing, and people will give them, you know,
exactly.
most of the time
Uh,
they don't give them money. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they'll give them treats or, hot cocoa or something like that.
right. And then you can also wassail the trees. And I have a whole section about that with poetry and songs that you can sing to the trees. You're
Hmm.
supposed to pick out the most productive apple tree in the orchard, and you
Hmm.
honor the tree by wassailing the tree. So you sing to the tree, you pour a little bit of alcohol on the roots, everybody drinks some wassail, and the old custom is you're supposed to take toast and put that in the branches. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure exactly why. I mean, the birds would like it, I guess, but they also would float toast in the wassail bowl. So somehow toast was a big deal. I'm not sure why, but that,
Interesting.
yeah, that
I
was,
don't think it floated for very long. Um, and I didn't know they had toasters back then.
That's right. Yeah.
well, you toast over you. Oh boy, you
Over the
toast over
fire.
the fire. Yeah, you have two metal screens, and the bread goes in between, and you hold
I
it over
know.
the flames.
I actually have that for in all my camping equipment is
Oh,
the old fashioned. Yeah.
yeah, that's what they did. They made toast. But toast was a really big thing for some reason.
I wonder why. That's really interesting. So we discovered the origin of Christmas caroling as well. Never thought about that. And the idea of the wassailing was it is it designed specifically to just bring up the joy of that time of year, or was it more that you're honoring the trees and you're honoring the people? I mean, are they both kind of the same, or
Well, when you're going around the village wassailing,
Mhm.
you're actually drinking to people's health.
Okay,
So you're ensuring that they're going to be healthy.
right,
Uh, when you're wassailing the tree, you're honoring the tree, and so that it will be healthy, I guess, and keep producing, you know.
right. Well, I
But
mean,
that's specific to that's an English tradition,
mhm.
wassailing. But singing, I mean, singing's been around since
Right.
Mesopotamia,
I mean,
you know.
and even a lot of the science that's out today says that, if you sing or talk to your plants, they actually do better. They
Mhm.
actually will grow better. And so, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Again, science is just proving what the Druids and such knew centuries ago. And now we're just finally putting it to the mathematics and all of our technology, saying, yeah, I guess these guys did know what they were talking about. Yeah, they did. They weren't crazy. So, oh goodness, there is just so many freaking questions. Um, what is first footing?
Okay, well that's I thought, I mean, I always knew it was done in Scotland at
Mhm.
Hogmanay, but I found out it's done in other areas as well. And again, I have a whole chapter on that. But in Scotland, typically it's on New Year's Eve, and the first person who comes into the house is very important because it determines the luck of the year. So the most lucky person to come across the doorway should be a tall, dark man.
Okay,
So Ross, you would be very good for that. You would be
thank you.
Gary,
Very
I
good.
can't see what color your hair is, but a tall dark man is considered really good.
Okay.
Um, and then it goes downhill from there. And the worst possible thing is a redheaded woman. That's really bad.
Hmm.
Uh, so so in
Okay.
Scotland, at Hogmanay, which is New Year's, sometimes they would make arrangements ahead of time for some guy to stand outside in the cold, waiting for the stroke of midnight, and then they open the door just so he can come in, and cross the threshold. But in other countries, I think in Greece, I don't know, don't quote me, but other countries, they also have the same tradition. It's called first footing.
Mhm.
The first person who comes in, it's supposed to be male. And what he's supposed to do is he's supposed to walk over to the hearth, the fireplace, and knock on the wood to make sparks. And that's considered very lucky.
Mhm.
And that goes back to the idea of repelling demonic forces from coming down the chimney.
Yeah. Okay, so Gary, I'm coming up to visit you in a couple weeks. I don't want you renting me out.
Well, the first footer would often come equipped with a bottle of whiskey. That's very nice.
Oh,
And-
okay. Gotcha. So, and now this tradition is just during the winter solstice, or is this a year-round tradition?
No, this is at New Year's.
Just for at New Year's.
Yeah, it's a New
Okay.
Year's.
Okay.
But I thought about it a lot. Like a redheaded man is not as lucky as a dark-haired man, and a redheaded woman is really bad, right? So I thought about this and why redheads? And the only thing I could figure out was Vikings. Because if some tall redheaded guy with a beard appears at your door, you're toast. You know,
Yeah.
you're in trouble.
That's a good point too. I'll have to ask my relatives. So I'm traditionally from Norway. So yeah, I'll have to ask around.
Well,
You
that's
guys
where the
know-
red hair comes from.
Yeah.
You know, people think of the Irish as having red hair, but the indigenous Celts had dark hair. And then, you know, the Vikings came and settled Dublin, and
Right.
that's where all the red hair comes from.
That's fantastic. You know, so we've pretty much got to the end of our hour, and Ellen, this has just been phenomenal. As I said, we are going to promote your book. We're going to get this out as soon as we can, and
Totally. Yeah.
for
I've got
everyone
mine. It'll be here next Friday. So
exactly. So for everybody
looking
listening,
forward to
the book is The Sacred Herbs of Yule and Christmas, and the link will be down in the comments, and you can get that. And Ellen, you're going to be back. You are going to be back.
That's awesome.
I was not kidding. You're going to be at least 3 times more next year, because this is fascinating. I love this type of material. To find out where things began is always the most important. So anyhow, we appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so very, very much. And we hope you have an absolute blessed holiday, and I'll be in touch.
And happy Yule.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
He reigns supreme, where pure relationship building and collaboration take center stage. So imagine joining in this space, feeling an immediate sense of warmth and camaraderie. You greet and you're greeted by purpose-driven entrepreneurs and thought leaders from diverse backgrounds, all gathered with a shared intention to connect, to learn, to grow together. And the air just swells with the vibrant energy of possibility and the excitement of collective wisdom.
Okay, so keeping your eyes closed, continue to imagine that. As you participate with the intention of service, you become part of engaging and deep conversations. Everyone is actively listening to one another with genuine interest. There are no ulterior motives or hidden agendas. Everyone is focused on understanding, empathizing, and learning from each other. It's a place where vulnerability is celebrated. For it's through vulnerability that true connection is forged. In this space, you are not just a name or a title. You are seen, you're heard, and valued for your unique perspective and contribution that goes beyond your business label. You feel a sense of belonging and empowerment, knowing that your voice matters and that your ideas have the potential to create positive change for those in the meeting with you. By you participating in this virtual environment, we are co-creating a sanctuary of conscious collaboration where the power of collective minds can be unleashed. It's a departure from the traditional business landscape where competition often has been valued and often overshadows collaboration. But here, we prioritize collaboration over competition, recognizing that by working together, we can achieve far more by working than working in isolation.
Yeah, and so we are imagining this transformative journey together. And in doing that, we can embrace a place where purpose-driven entrepreneurs and thought leaders converge, where authenticity and relationships are the currency, and where collaboration is the catalyst for remarkable achievements. Just imagine that. Now, go ahead and open your eyes, come back, and let's begin to build this reality together, right here, right now. And before we go into that and go towards that, here's what others are saying about this type of collaborative environment and what their experiences are. Okay. All right, now that you've watched those, here are a few things you need to know to be ready for the virtual roundtable. First thing is that you need to be there right on time or early if possible, because we want to honor everyone's time and start into the experience right away. Because once we get going, there's such a flow of creative interactions and ideas that it's important that we actually head right into the breakout rooms about 5 minutes in, so we don't really waste a lot of time. So to prevent interruptions, we won't be letting anyone in late. And that's a strict rule, a strict boundary we're going to stick by.
Exactly. And second thing is that you need to be camera ready. This is not a sit behind a blank screen experience. There are no spectators. Have pen and paper ready. You have to have your camera on in order to really participate with your partners, in order to build those relationships and those collaborations. Think of this like the blending of a super powerful mastermind with the time and the efficiency of a speed dating service. So you can expect efficient use of your time and a variety of interactions with like-minded entrepreneurs in a no-pressure environment for a powerful bonding experience. So, for example, let's say you had individual meetings with, let's say, 20 people at 30 minutes each. Well, that would take you 10 hours. But instead, if you met those 20 people in 1 2-hour day, you're going to have a relationship and a bond with everyone in the virtual roundtable. So this is such a smart, efficient use of your time when you come to these events.
Absolutely. And the most important rule is that everything we do here is in a safe place.
Absolutely.
You can show up as your authentic self and know that you have a space where you can get real help. This also sets the tone so that you get amazing value from each event. You're going to leave with solid connections, absolutely. Now, let's face it, being an entrepreneur can sometimes be so isolating. Well, it's time for us to change that, right? And when you have a community like this, you're going to want to come back and interact with familiar and new members on a regular basis. So remember that imagining that we had you do a little earlier today in the video? Well, we are going to facilitate that kind of experience for those who show up. All right. Once again, thanks for being here and taking action. As we all know, that's the only way to get things done. Now, let's connect, get empowered, and create an impact. If you have any questions, you can DM either us or myself on Facebook, and we look forward to seeing you in our next virtual roundtable.
We'll see you
Thanks.
there. Thanks. Bye-bye.